Number 7. Alexis Rogers. New Mexico teen Alexis Rogers was driving in the South Valley on the night of March the 20th of 2018 when a motorist in a Dodge Challenger swerved in front of her after bailing out of a left turn. Rogers proceeded to angrily chase the Challenger down, at which point a passenger in her vehicle pulled out a firearm and shot into the other car. 16-year-old Efrain Azate was consequently killed, prompting Rogers and the shooter, identified as her boyfriend, Damian Luna, also 16 at the time, to go on the run. They reportedly fled to Texas, Nevada, and Colorado before finally being tracked down and taken into police custody on murder charges. During subsequent questioning, Rogers told detectives that she chose not to come forward following the shooting because she was scared of Luna, whom she accused of physically abusing her. The young woman also allegedly admitted to having been high on Xanax during the road rage incident that claimed Azate's life. After posting her $150,000 bail, Rogers was ordered not to consume drugs or alcohol and was also given an 8 p.m. curfew. In direct defiance of the judge's decrees, the 19-year-old was alleged to have hosted a party with roughly 100 attendees at her Albuquerque home. In the early hours of the morning, one of the partygoers was fatally shot, following an altercation that left Rogers herself unconscious. In the end, despite Rogers' perpetual non-compliance, her attempts to portray herself as a victim proved effective in court, and she was ultimately granted a plea deal that greatly reduced the severity of her charges. In June of 2019, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison in connection to Azate's killing, a punishment that many viewed as far too lenient considering the circumstances of the case. Number 6. Kim Potter. Minnesota police officer Kim Potter pulled over a motorist in Brooklyn Center for an expired license plate and illegal air freshener on April the 11th of 2021. During the course of the traffic stop, the 48-year-old policewoman learned that the driver, 20-year-old Deontay Wright, had an outstanding warrant. Potter, her supervisor, and a police trainee subsequently tried to arrest the unarmed man, who attempted to flee the scene. Body cam footage of the incident showed the supervisor and trainee officer trying to prevent Wright from driving away while Potter warned him, "I'll tase you." She then yelled, "Taser, taser, taser," prompting the other officers to release their grip on the suspect. Potter then unholstered her service handgun and fired a single round into Wright, who drove off before losing control and crashing into another vehicle in a nearby intersection. The man was administered CPR but ultimately pronounced dead at the scene. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office subsequently determined Wright's manner of death to be homicide. A few days later, Potter was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter, which carries a maximum penalty of 10 years incarceration and a $20,000 fine in the state of Minnesota. During the case's legal proceedings, Potter maintained that she'd mistakenly grabbed her firearm while attempting to reach for her taser. Prosecutors labeled the fatal error a product of the officer's recklessness and negligence. Her defense team attempted to portray the incident as an honest mistake rather than a criminal act. Potter was ultimately convicted of both first and second-degree manslaughter. In December of 2021, the prosecution requested that she be sentenced to 7 years and 2 months. However, in February of 2022, Potter was ordered to serve just 16 months behind bars, with an additional 8 months she could avoid with good behavior. While the victim's family was dismayed by the light sentence, they were awarded more than $3 million after settling a wrongful death lawsuit with the city of Brooklyn Center in the summer of 2022. Number 5. Callie Kuhas. On June the 25th of 2016, Colorado woman Callie Kuhas hit a cyclist while driving near 30th and J Road in North Boulder. It later emerged that the motorist had swerved 3 feet into the bike lane, and the resulting collision claimed 35-year-old Bill Davis's life. Kuhas drove off but was later tracked down by Boulder police officers, who reportedly found a 30-pack of beer in her car with only 5 cans left unopened. At the time of the crash, the woman had also been on probation for driving while impaired earlier that year. During the ensuing criminal trial, Kuhas's father vehemently defended her, claiming that the media had sensationalized the case and unreasonably painted her as an evil villain. He also appeared to levy some of the blame for the fatal incident on the victim himself, saying, "If you ride on the open road, be aware about what can happen," which elicited an audible gasp from court spectators. Kuhas ultimately pleaded guilty to vehicular homicide and DUI charges and was consequently sentenced to 12 years in prison. Davis's widowed wife said in the sentencing's aftermath that 12 years is definitely not long enough for someone who takes a life in that manner. Number 4. Praiwa. In December of 2010, a Thai team was operating a vehicle on a tollway without a driver's license when she crashed into a van carrying 14 people coming from Thammasat University's Rangsit campus. The van consequently flipped over and was sent plummeting off the elevated expressway. 8 of its passengers were killed after having been thrown from the vehicle, while a 9th victim succumbed to their injuries later at the hospital. The 16-year-old motorist, commonly referred to as Praiwa, was arrested and charged with driving without a license as well as reckless driving causing death and injury. Despite the severity of the incident, Praiwa was only ordered to complete 138 hours of community service as punishment, a mandate she reportedly took 4 years to fulfill. She was also banned from driving until the age of 25, but many still considered the consequences for her actions to have been disproportionately mild. In a separate verdict handed down in civil court, Praiwa was instructed to pay nearly $800,000 in restitution to the victims of the fatal accident, as well as the families of those killed. Number 3. The judgments of Timothy Q. Feely. Massachusetts Superior Court Justice Timothy Q. Feely came under fire following a series of questionable rulings made over the course of a few months in 2018. The first of 3 heavily scrutinized decisions was handed down in March. Feely allowed a Salem man accused of assaulting a child out of jail after setting his bail at just $100, ignoring the ardent protests of prosecutors. Only a month later, the judge faced similar criticism for lowering the bail for 29-year-old John Williams, a Maine resident with a lengthy rap sheet. 2 weeks after Williams was released from custody, he reportedly gunned down a Somerset County Sheriff's deputy during a traffic stop. Then in May, Feely was widely pilloried for a light sentence given to drug dealer Manuel Soto Bettini. The Peabody resident had pleaded guilty to possession with intent to distribute heroin and cocaine after having been caught with more than 15 grams of illegal substances. The prosecution sought a 1 to 3 year prison term for 33-year-old Soto Bettini. However, Feely ultimately sentenced him to 2 years of probation in lieu of jail time. Massachusetts lawmakers subsequently pressured the House Speaker to hold a vote on a resolution seeking to impeach Feely from the Salem Superior Court. Furthermore, an online petition calling for Feely's removal was started, and as of the latest updates was nearing 10,000 signatures. Number 2. Brock Turner. In the early hours of January the 18th of 2015, a pair of Swedish graduate students at Stanford University in California came upon an assault in progress behind a dumpster on campus. According to their testimony, Brock Allen Turner, then a 19-year-old student athlete, was laying on top of an unconscious woman whose dress had been pulled up to expose her genitals. When the eyewitnesses, who'd been cycling around campus at the time, confronted the young man, he reportedly fled the scene. One of the cyclists went to check on the victim while the other chased Turner down and pinned him to the ground until the arrival of law enforcement. The young woman, identified as 22-year-old Chanel Miller, regained consciousness at the hospital a few hours later. She had sustained numerous injuries, including abrasions and erythema on her skin, as well as bruising, piercing, and cutting wounds. Miller told investigators that she hadn't consented to the acts Turner had forced upon her. The team was arrested and released the same day after posting a $150,000 bail. His initial indictment imposed 5 total charges to which he pleaded not guilty. Rather than face disciplinary actions from Stanford, Turner withdrew from the university, which nevertheless banned him from ever stepping foot on campus again. The case's trial commenced on March the 14th of 2016. 16 days later, Turner was found guilty of 3 felony counts, and prosecutors recommended a 6-year prison sentence. However, presiding Judge Aaron Persky sentenced him to just 6 months in jail, followed by 3 years of probation. The decision was met with widespread criticism, and Judge Persky was ultimately recalled by county voters in June of 2018. Turner was released for good behavior after serving only half of his sentence. Number 1. Michael McGowan. Florida police were called to an Airbnb in Miami on May the 18th of 2020 after receiving reports of shots fired on the premises. When they arrived, officers came upon 17-year-old Giselle Gigi Rengifo dead on the ground with a gunshot wound to the head. A black handgun and magazine were also found atop a desk positioned near the house's front door. In the aftermath, Michael McGowan, also 17 at the time, allegedly confessed to having been holding the firearm when it accidentally discharged, killing Rengifo. The two teens had been among a group of partiers at the Airbnb who had begun passing around the weapon before it unexpectedly went off. McGowan was arrested and charged with manslaughter. During the ensuing court proceedings, the young man's legal defense team argued that the shooting had been entirely accidental and that everyone at the house that night had handled the gun at some point, including the victim. They also referred to McGowan's age at the time of the incident, attempting to portray him to the jury as just a reckless kid. The prosecution challenged the validity of the age argument, saying, "He's not a child. He was almost 18 years old." McGowan wasn't ultimately tried as an adult, which would have come with a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. Instead, he was sentenced to 364 days in Dade County Jail, followed by 4 years of probation and mandatory attendance of a county boot camp program. Rengifo's family expressed outrage at what they perceived to be an extremely lenient punishment. Immediately following the announcement of the sentence, several family members began shouting in the courtroom. In a particularly dramatic moment, the victim's mother pointed at McGowan and tearfully said, "I can't hear her calling me mommy anymore. You took that from me." Thanks for watching. Would you rather be robbed only to have the judge let them keep your stolen belongings, or have to give every cent of disposable income to your worst enemy? Let us know in the comments section below.